it's been more than a month since you recommended that all of your employees work from home. You, along with a bunch of other tech companies, were early to this trend. And you recently said that you won't fully reopen offices until September 1st. So, Stewart, what does that look like? What needs to be in place for you to get back to some kind of normal and have your employees go back to work?
I think the real answer there is I don't know. There's so much uncertainty at this point, and I think people really like to collapse that uncertainty because it's an unpleasant state for humans to be in. And I see compelling arguments on all sides. I think we still need a little bit more information. And what we're saying ultimately is that we don't expect to be back to normal until at least September 1st. So we're not going to expect or require employees to come to the office. We may before then open the offices to make it available for employees who need to get out of their house. But I think there's just, still so much we don't know.
Right. Are you encouraged by trends that you're seeing? Do certain testing requirements need to be in place for that to happen? What are sort of your indicators to know when it is time?
Well, ultimately, an organization like ours who is surviving well, working from home, in other words, we're still productive, we're still serving customers, we're still making new developments, has much less of an incentive. There's no reason, there's no prize for being first here. So I don't have any specific expectation or requirement. It's a little bit more just wait and see.
So, Stewart, on Microsoft's earnings call last night, Teams was mentioned 42 times. That was up from just 9 times the previous quarter. Even Azure was mentioned less yesterday at 35 times. So it really sounds like Microsoft is pouring everything into Teams. Now, I know that the competition is fierce, but at the end of the day, Slack has substantially less cash on hand, less of a reach into the enterprise space. Are you ready for this battle to heat up? Are you seeing signs of it yourself?
Well, I don't know that. I think what we've seen over the last couple of months is that Teams is not a competitor to Slack. I mean, they talk about the product. They never mention the fundamentals that Slack does. And it's been 3+ years at this point that they've been bundling it, giving it away for free, talking about us. And over that time, we've grown our entire enterprise business. All of our grid customers, all of our customers with more than $100,000 in revenue have come up during that time. So I think there's this perpetual question, which is, at this point, a little puzzling for us, that at some point, Microsoft's just going to kill us. I mean, in another sense, they got to be a little bit frustrated at this point. They have 250-ish million Office 365 users. They just announced this massive increase in growth of Teams to a little under 30%. So after 3 years of bundling it, pre-installing it on people's machines, kind of insisting that administrators turn it on, forcing users from Skype for Business to switch to Teams, they still only have 29%, which means 71% of their users have said no, thank you.
Hey, Stu, it's John Fort. Good to see you. I wanted to ask you some more about that competitive dynamic, because in some sense, it's the classic best of breed versus large incumbent battle. But I also think it's hard for us to see and understand sometimes how you view the competitive landscape and the path to the customer. So right now, when so many customers are now aware of the need for a product in your category, what's your approach? What's your strategy for converting customers and just in general continuing to grow your base?
The same stuff that we've always done. So Slack very often starts in a large organization, even our biggest customers, which now have hundreds of thousands of daily active users, paying us $1 million or more a year. They start with a work group. They start with someone who thought, I can improve how this happens. I can improve communication inside of this team or this business unit or this organization. Slack usage grows. We get in touch with them because for a large organization, it's obviously, it can be a complicated thing for people to buy software. There's the security review and vendor approval process. There's a whole bunch of implementation details and administrative stuff, maybe regulatory and compliance features that are a requirement for them. And in that environment, it can take many, many months. So we have sales, solutions engineering, customer success teams that work with these large organizations to do enormous deployments.
So what is it that you have to do that's different then? I imagine there must be something, even if you're able to work well from home, your customers are probably in different locations, their processes are different.
I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood the question. It's very different. In some cases, it actually seems a little bit more effective. Like for me to come on the show, typically I would have been in New York. I would blow 45 minutes going all the way uptown to the studio, spend some time in the green room. I'm going right back to work after this. And I just finished something else immediately before this. For our customer success teams, they're actually more efficient right now because customers, in one sense, are really paying attention because suddenly this is an urgent issue for them, and we don't have to travel. So, you might, for a 2-hour meeting, there might have been 14 hours of overhead. Now, does that sustain itself? That's really hard to say. And kind of looking further out, second half of the year, field marketing programs are not running, events are not running, our executive briefing centers are closed, but we're in the same position as everyone else. And I guess you got to ask yourself, are CIOs, our IT teams going to be spending less net on software, 6, 12, 18 months from now? Maybe at the margins, maybe temporarily, but I think if anything, this has really accelerated the digital transformation, accelerated the adoption of software, and I think we come out of this whenever we do, which could be 18 or 24 months, in a much stronger position, us and the whole software industry, frankly.
Yeah, Stewart, this is Morgan. I guess sort of along those lines, I mean, obviously Slack has been very focused on business and workplace, whether it is within the office or whether it is now increasingly folks that are working remotely. I wonder, with so many other types of entities, institutions, and industries also remote right now, and the possibility, and I'm thinking of like Harvard, for example, saying that there's a possibility that they're going to be doing classes online come the fall as well. Do you see other opportunities to expand into some of these other areas as well? Could they be potential future revenue streams for you?
Yeah, we actually do pretty well in education. I don't. I'm not sure which customers are allowed to mention there, so I saw, but most of the Ivy League, most of the most famous universities in the United States, some big state schools like Arizona State is a customer. Now, it's not Slack is kind of an open messaging platform for students, because I don't think that would be that useful, but deeply integrated into the faculty, the administration, and the delivery of educational materials. I think that is a significant market for us, and it also exposes Slack, obviously, to students, which is great. Thinking a little bit more broadly, organizations are being forced to do things in a different way. And one of the things that becomes more important when you kind of, if you're an organization that is reliant on in-person meetings to get work done, one of the things that becomes more important is more discipline around communication. The cost of coordination and making sure people are on the same page, kind of generating this alignment, becomes a lot more expensive. So we look at, recently, just a couple of days ago, we had the CTO of Viacom CBS announce that they rolled out Slack for 20,000 users there. And we think about the merger going on, kind of knitting those companies together in a time when there's the global pandemic happening. There's real challenges. And so it's an honor to be able to help in those contexts, but that's happening everywhere. There's these real challenges that organizations have to up-level how they communicate. They have to kind of rethink processes, everything from new hire onboarding to employee performance reviews to how they run their sales organizations. So given that it's not going to change overnight, I think the investment that organizations are making makes a lot of sense.
Hey, Stewart, it's Deirdre again. Earlier this month, you guys raised $750 million in a debt offering that was upsized. It carried a very attractive interest rate of about 0.5 percentage point. Do you feel like you need to continue to preserve cash or potentially even raise more capital, especially since we're in these uncertain times? Microsoft is ramping up, and you can secure it at such an appealing rate.
Yeah, so there's defensive reasons and there's kind of offense reasons for us to do that. One is we don't know how bad things are going to get on the macro. We don't know how long the recession is going to last or what it's going to look like. So having more cash, even though we were already in a very strong cash position going into it with around $750 million already on the balance sheet. But my motivation as one of the people who made the decision was much more on the offense. The acquisitions we can make now, you're starting to see some softness in the advertising market. Our dollars will go further there. I think we're in a relatively much improved position with respect to competition for talent. And we want to be really aggressive there. So I don't know that we could spend any more or that any more of a reserve would be useful at this point, but we do want to be as aggressive as we can while we have this enormous opportunity.
Right. So that capital raise was more of an offensive play. But in terms of a defensive play, a few weeks ago, you also raised some caution about sustainability. You said that it's hard to know how much all of the explosive growth that you have seen is sustainable, given all of the uncertainty that we are seeing. So How is that going? Are you locking down more enterprise deals? What are you seeing among your small business customers? Do you feel any kind of a responsibility to help them out by, say, renegotiating deals or delaying payments?
We actually have done quite a bit of that. And we proactively reached out to some of our customers who we know are most affected. There's a lot of businesses who kind of ground to a halt. Revenue fall 80%, 90%, in some cases like 95%. And businesses who thought they had a year and a half or 2 years of cash on hand suddenly have 45 days of cash on hand. So we're trying to find solutions that work for them. I think the growth is unsustainable in the sense that we would have more than the entire population of the world using Slack, if the rate of increase kept constant. So I think what I'm more concerned about is in the back half of the year, how many layoffs do we see? How many bankruptcies do we see? How many organizations just completely pulling back? And that's what the question mark for us is, because the initial stages of this have been a positive for the business. They've been more new users, more new customers, more usage among existing customers, this expansion. But we are starting to see small businesses starting to pull back. We have 110,000 customers as of our last earnings. So you can imagine most of those are small and medium businesses, and we've yet to see what the real impact is going to be.